Should you pursue a legal career in the civil practice or the criminal practice? These are a few things to keep in mind before you make that choice. Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified. I'm Shaveen Bandaranayaka. Just like any other profession, there are many pathways that you can take when it comes to the fraternity of the law. Oftentimes, students would come up to me at the very first instance of recognizing the various modes of pursuing their career aspirations in law and say that they want to either become a criminal barrister, for instance, or that they want to get into corporate law, that they want to get into mergers and acquisitions, for example, or share swaps for that matter. Over time, what I've noticed is that students evolve in terms of what they feel that they are good at on the one hand, and slowly but steadily become less and less passionate about the law itself. Contrary to popular belief, there is no such thing as a right path to take in law. There is an appropriate or rewarding path based on your competencies as well as your passion in law. But there's no one singular way to get to a destination, so to speak. This video is meant to distill several notions or disparities that are present in relation to students selecting the pathway at the very inception of their legal or academic careers. Now, by and large, there are two fundamental or distinct pathways that you can opt for. And I'd argue if you are in the latter portion of your first year or just commencing your second year, this may be of help to you. Essentially, the two distinct pathways is that of the civil and criminal practice. Now, more often than not, you might hear practitioners as well as academics tell you that there is more opportunities that are available across jurisdictions when it comes to the civil practice. And for the most part, this is in fact true. It's much more granular, it's much more specific, and the opportunities that are presented, irrespective of the jurisdiction, is quite wide. You can, for example, opt to be working for a corporate or a company and progress through the career ladder, even going on to become part of the board. You could also opt to have your own practice, growing from the seedlings or an entrepreneurial venture all the way up to a big firm or a partnership. There are occasions, for instance, you might not follow either of those paths and utilize your prowess or your knowledge in civil law to advise parties on a more informal level whilst doing something completely different. I have many students of mine who have pursued an LLB or a law degree, become a solicitor, and then become part of companies in a different capacity, from management to marketing to even in some instances engineering and construction. So when it comes to the civil practice, yes, it's much more wide in terms of the opportunities available. Conversely, when you take the criminal practice, it's relatively much more linear. Most of my students who have followed the fast track and masterclass programs, who have then gone on to become prosecutors, have often told me how rewarding the process of the criminal practice is, although it might sometimes be hectic as well as emotionally draining. Now, mind you, what I am presenting to you or what I'm suggesting to you is based on my own personal experience as well as those of the alumni of the Law Simplified program. Depending on the jurisdiction and where you intend to practice, these will differ from one to the other. But specifically when you consider the criminal practice, irrespective of the jurisdiction, one trait that I often hear from students who have gone on into the practice, both in relation to a defense counsel as well as prosecution, is that the criminal practice itself weighs much more heavily in terms of a burden on them as opposed to the civil practice. Perhaps the notion that a person's liberty, a person's life might be in the hands of the counsel, him or herself, suggests that there is a relatively higher level of duty or obligation that the counsel or the legal practitioner feels, unlike that of a civil practitioner. But that being said, I've often seen most students being relatively skeptical about following a path in criminal law or in the criminal practice, predominantly because A, it might not be as rewarding financially as that of the civil practice, and B, the likelihood that you might encounter nefarious individuals. Now, oftentimes I've impressed upon my fast track and masterclass students that second notion that you would encounter nefarious individuals is a trait that you'd have to get used to regardless of whether you're going into the civil practice or the criminal practice. So as long as you're passionate and you are good at your advocacy and your arguments, it is a pathway that you should consider selecting. Now, this video is not meant to be used to make your decision at this stage of your academic career. You might be a student who's just finishing your first year or getting into the second year, and you're presented with opportunities and options that might be quite exciting at this stage. I have often seen an attenuation of interest in students as they progress through their academic careers, predominantly because the subject matter gets tougher and tougher as you go on, and you start thinking of whatever opportunity comes your way as the best opportunity there is for you. Now, on a number of occasions on this very YouTube channel, as well as the different platforms that the Law Simplified is disseminated on, I've spoken about how you can be granular about your selection process and to define a niche for yourself so that you become an industry expert in that particular area. Not to mention the fact that the practice itself or going into the fraternity might not be the only option having completed your LLB or your law degree. You can go into other professions as well, some of which I've discussed in the career guidance playlist available on this YouTube channel and which I will link to below. Now, all things considered, the practice itself has to revolve around what you as an individual feel most comfortable with doing. Whilst this is a basic outline of the distinctions between civil law and criminal law and the practice itself, there are much more fundamental considerations that you need to make from your own aspects, from your own life and your background, which I suggest you look deeper into before really jumping into any particular area. If you'd like to understand a deeper construct of what the civil practice entails, with some examples as well, and similarly, what opportunities are there in the criminal practice, make sure you leave a comment below and I'll make sure to expand this particular video or this particular presentation, so to speak, into a more comprehensive and more extended series of videos to help you understand and to help you gauge which area or which career path best suits you. But until the next time that we meet, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.